Everyone knows on Dodson's Corner, we are always bricked up hard.
I was going to start the intro. There's been a lot of talk recently about what is the hardest division to become champion in. With everyone moving around, we got Top Churro up in lightweight now. We want to make a video breaking down what is the hardest division to become champion and what division do you need one win to be fighting for the belt.
Well, then I think we should start with the easiest.
Yeah, let's start with the easiest. This is where I have heavyweight.
I do as well.
It's not really much of a surprise. You might see a correlation with weight class.
They just cut someone, so I think there's under 30 ranked heavyweights.
Oh no. Who'd they cut?
I swear that they cut a heavyweight.
Oh dang, that's brutal, man. The heavyweights. I don't understand like why they feel the need to cut heavyweights, you know?
Ranked heavyweights, like Rosenstrike.
Yeah, it's not like you have a plethora of people to choose from. But I think this is it's without the doubt the easiest because you only need one fight to get ranked.
Yeah. And we've seen that with guys like Teixeira, Parkin, all those guys, DeLima, all those guys. Well, maybe some of them have more now, but like
they're not getting big wins that you're like, oh yeah, I recognize that name.
Yeah, Taliesin Teixeira, boom, winner. There's gonna be guys coming off the contender series that are gonna go straight to the rankings. You're one fight away from the belt at that point.
Yeah, and I think even the Rizvan Kuniev fight with Curtis Blades, like that's a fighter who got popped and then got, shoved out from the UFC, had a PFL fight, and then came back to the UFC. Oh yeah, here's your top 5 ranked opponent. What?
It's silly.
Yeah.
So we look at it, one win realistically to the rankings. Mm-hmm. And then they're pushing guys up the rankings. I bet you Teixeira's fighting someone top 7, top 8.
Yeah.
Same thing we see Mick Parkin fighting Tybura.
Yeah, so it's like you fight halfway up the rankings, you're ranked number 7. From there,
you fight one of the top guys. You fight a Pavlich, a Volkov, a Blades.
Yeah.
Boom, you get a win over one of those guys. I mean, you can't really fight for the belt because it's being held up, but you can fight for the interim belt.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, even though it's easy to get ranked and it's easy to move up the rankings comparatively, it's still hard to become the champion because you have that mess. So I almost put this one a lot higher because of, okay, not only do you have to get through John Jones if he ever fights again, but Tom Aspinall is probably like one of the highest skill gaps per division. We were looking at Alex Pereira thinking he was a high skill gap, and then Ank beat him.
Yeah. The way I kind of looked at it is if like say this was UFC 5, you spawn your character into that division, and you got to work your way up to become champion. This would be the easiest because by the time you get there, Jones is hopefully gone, and Tom Aspinall, the type of guy that's going to fight every 3 months.
That's true. And I think Tom Aspinall doesn't have like perfect defense either. So it's heavyweight. There's always a chance of a fluke KO. Exactly. We haven't seen Tom's ground game a lot. I think even with Tom being dominant, there's still the best possibility that he randomly loses.
Well, and there's a reason that we've seen so much turnover with heavyweight champions. We don't have a dominant heavyweight GOAT just because the threat of that knockout.
Yeah. That's true.
So let's move on to number 7. Next easiest.
I think we should probably have the same one, light heavyweight.
It's light heavyweight.
Okay, yeah.
Big Ank at the top, though. You better watch out. He's scary, man. He's scary.
I know. He is. I mean, he's on like an 11 fight unbeaten streak, so it's tough to say that it's going to be easy to become the champion, but it's similar to heavyweight where it's like the rankings and outside the rankings are full of just trash cans.
Yeah, I think there's only about 50 light heavyweights in the world.
Sounds about right.
So, and the guys you're fighting in light heavyweight are just, they got about 2 minutes of cardio.
Yeah, you got Alonzo Menafield, who fought someone on short notice, coming off the contender series, I believe, or it was his first UFC fight, and the dude arguably won the fight.
Yeah, it was so close.
Atomic Alonzo Menafield is not doing it in the lower half of the rankings.
And then you have guys at the bottom half, like Anthony Smith, Dominic Reyes, guys who are like, as much as they're fan favorites, they're clearly past their prime.
Yeah.
They don't got a lot left. They don't got a lot of chin, So any like a Ming Yang Zhang should have no issue with a guy like Anthony Smith because he's on the up.
Yeah, it's also just like tough in these divisions to tell how good the prospects are because the 2 biggest prospects, which were, there's probably Navajo Sterling as well, but Ibo Aslan and Ming Yang Zhang, it's like they can just get fraud checked at any point.
R.I.P. my boy Ibo Aslan.
Yeah, like they can just get absolutely fraud checked if they don't have grappling.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you don't need it. Like Alex Pereira did his whole UFC run without needing that much grappling. And so you're like, okay, these guys are going to make it far. They got big punching power. And it's like, oh no, Ian Kachaluba is going to submit them for the first time in his career. Like, it's so random in those divisions. Anything can happen. And I did want to highlight the fact that there's still that golden ticket free top 5 win with Alexander Rakic.
Oh, I forgot about that.
So
guy.
you get free top 5.
The light heavyweight rankings just don't stack up to the rest of them. Like we look at like the depth in it, and it falls off quick.
Yeah,
you know.
I think we're in an era of like, even if we have a weak heavyweight and a weak light heavyweight, I think we're in an era of strong champions.
Yeah, like Jones and Aspinall, Pereira, Ank,
like they're very tough to beat. I think they dominate their weight classes, but in saying that, Ank is also unproven against like high level competition other than Pereira and
Jan Blachowicz coming back for that belt.
Yeah, I know, but it's like you look at someone like Islam's record, and he's like beating notable names to get to the title, plus notable names title defenses. Ank, like as a casual fan, the only Ank fights you could name are Johnny Walker, which is not a great win. Jan Blachowicz was a draw, and then Alex Pereira, which was a good win.
Rakic.
And
I don't even know if they name him.
Yeah,
like,
it's just ridiculous.
The most forgettable top 5 fighter of all time.
Yeah,
him and Amir Albazi, just like the biggest NPCs in a top 5.
But that might be a video actually. Biggest NPCs in the UFC.
I feel like I had one more thing to say.
Oh, it's all good, man. I'm sure the people won't miss it too much. Should we move on?
Yeah.
All right, number 6. This is where I have bantamweight.
Ooh, bantamweight that low?
Yeah, and I know I changed these rankings up quite a bit. I think Merab is going to be near impossible to beat for the next 2 years. But you know, I thought the same thing about Alex Pereira, so don't listen to me. The top 15 overall is extremely weak. You got guys like Ayman Zahabi, who do you know why he's in the top 15? Who his last win was?
Tell me.
Javid Basharat, brother. They're ranking a Canadian off of Javid Basharat.
I forgot that's why he's ranked there.
Yeah, so that's wild. You got Kyler Phillips, who literally looks like an Alex Morono at bantamweight, and then you have Rob Font, you know, still good, but just an older fighter. Marcus McGee, again, like power, but it's just not compelling.
The bottom 5 of bantamweight is rough.
It's so bad.
But the top of it
is good.
Is stacked.
The top 5 is really good. But even like, you know, 6 or 7, you have Cheeto Vera. You got Figgy, which, let's be real, he's a very undersized bantamweight. I just don't think that's in a great place other than that like top 4. That's why I have it at 6.
At number 6, I have featherweight here. I just think that as much as there's a lot of competition outside of the rankings, you know, if you're a prospect working your way up, it's tough. You know, you have to beat some good people, you know, and it's one of the bigger divisions, so you have more fights. You know, we look at the amount of fights that it took guys like Lerone Murphy and Gene Silva to get close to those rankings. And then once you get in there, at the bottom, you got guys like Danny Ige and Bryce Mitchell, who are like, they're pretty decent fighters to be at the bottom. And then you work your way from there. It's like you got guys like Yair, Josh Emmett, and then Arnold Allen. Those guys are also tough middle of the pack. But then, like, I don't know, I kind of just like floats our way in because we lost guys like Ilia Topuria and we lost guys like Max Holloway. So now the top 3 of that division's looking like it's Movsar, Diego Lopez, and Volk. So I think that although the rankings of it are tougher than other divisions, once you're there to win that belt, it might even be one of the easier title fights inside of the UFC if you're fighting a guy like Movsar, Lopez, or Volk, you know, at the top of the division. I just think the top is weaker, and we're talking about trying to become champion, you know? So if you can make your way there, becoming champion ain't that hard. That's how we've seen a guy like Diego Lopez go on a 2-year run where he's fighting for the belt now, which is basically unheard of inside of the UFC.
Yeah. No, I think people are going to be surprised at the featherweight. But if you really think about it, it's actually not that
and
terrible.
If we took featherweight 2 months ago, pre-Ilia Topuria, this division might be one.
Yeah. You know?
It's
changed a lot in the last year. And Volk is old now. So it's like...
He's not the same Volk.
Yeah, I think...
You lose Holloway, like...
Yeah, it's just different now. All right, moving on to my number 5, I'll talk about featherweight. It's a weird time right now, like we just said. Volk is chinny. Topuria's gone. Lopez gasses out really fast. And Movsar, I'd say...
strike.
Yeah, he's not the best striker, but it's also like, how good is he?
Get him on Karate Combat.
Yeah, the Robelis to Spain treatment. And then outside of the rankings, like you were talking, it's extremely hard to get ranked.
Yes.
Like I would say you have to beat quite a few opponents to make it to that top 15, or you have to have a ton of hype behind you like Lerone Murphy or Gene Silva. That's like the only way that you can get a ranking spot within 4 fights.
Yeah.
Other than that, you're going to be just, you know, picking on guys, trying to get to that ranking, make a name for yourself, build up a win streak. I think there's a lot of good matchups to be made. Like, if you're a striker, you could move up that division pretty fast because you got Giga Chikadze. You could beat him. You got Arnold Allen, striker. You could beat him. Josh Emmett, another striker. You could beat him. So I feel like, if you're a pure striker, there's definitely a path for you to get to the top. And then even for grapplers, like, you can beat all these strikers with the right game plan. So I just think it's, there's not like, as much as you think of featherweight as being like the cream of the crop, which at the top it used to be, I think it's actually, there's not that many well-rounded fighters in featherweight right now.
Yeah, it might be the weakest it's ever been.
It's so weird. But
outside of when Jose Aldo was beating trash cans. But
hey, hardcores don't want to hear
come
that.
at me.
Yeah.
All right.
Let us know where you have featherweight, though. I think that's the most interesting one.
Yeah. This next one's a little bit more interesting, too. I originally had it a lot higher. I had it top 3, but then I was like, the champion situation bumps it down.
Oh, okay. I'm on my top 3.
No, it's right? I have number 5.
Never mind. I found the missing division.
I was gonna say you probably forgot flyweight.
I did.
All right, but moving on, my number 5. This is where I have welterweight. I had it a little bit higher just because the absolute depth of the rankings, and then even outside of the rankings is strong. But if you look at it, there's no dominant fighters inside of welterweight. We look at these top contenders. It's like Bilal. Bilal's breakable. Leon Edwards on the worst day of his career went to a 3-2 decision. Shavkat, number 1 contender, we'll say, 3-2 decision with Ian Gary.
Yeah.
JDM, 2-1 decision versus Gilbert Burns, almost lost that fight. There's no real dominance inside of the welterweight division. If you look at like who's the top guy in welterweight, you're like, who is? There's no one that stands out. There's an argument for a lot of different guys. You have guys like Usman who's not fighting. You have a guy like JDM and Shavkat who are always hurt. We have Buckley who's there, who I'm not convinced is actually that good. He just gets the right wins. And then we go down, and it's a little bit older, So with every 3-6 months that pass, the division gets worse with guys like Jeff Neal, Stephen Thompson, Neil Magny, Gilbert Burns just getting a little bit older.
Yeah.
So we're plotting you in. By the time you're there, that division's weak, because they're getting older, So it was a division I had top 3 just because of how stacked it is. But if you really look at it, although there's a lot of fights you need to have inside of those rankings, they're winnable fights if you're that good. If you're an actual championship contender, you should have no issues getting towards that welterweight belt.
All right. You made a compelling argument, my friend. This is where I got flyweight though.
I also have flyweight at 4.
Okay. It's it's easy to get ranked, I would say.
Yeah.
I cannot believe that they still don't have Joshua Van ranked. Like it's
I
so
could have swore he was number 13 and then they took him out.
Yeah, they did.
After he wins.
Yeah, they
dominates.
It's so dumb. But I just think it's you got old guys in there. You got Charles Johnson. He's old for flyweight.
No, he's on the up. He's on the up. 5 fights a year.
He is on the up, bro.
He ain't fought this year. He ain't fought this year.
It's so weird because he is on the up, but at the same time, he's just old. And then you got guys like, you got your Tim Elliott's down there who are just like, they just don't have much going for them. So if you're a young prospect, there's a very good path. But the reason why it's still high up is because you just have to be well-rounded. You cannot have no grappling because these guys are just going to be too fast in the scrambles for you.
Yeah, we look at a guy like Tatsuro Taira, who I wouldn't say is a one-dimensional fighter, but has probably the best grappling inside of the whole division and mediocre striking. In his number 1 contender match against Royval, can't get it done. You have to be basically Pantoja.
Yeah.
You have to be. We saw Steve Erceg, primarily a striker, not the best grappling. Goes out there, loses Pantoja. Kaya Sakura, basically no grappling, comes in as a striker, just gets dominated by Pantoja. Second that guy goes to the ground, he looks like Israel Adesanya, like
submitted instantly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like if you compare it to some of our earlier divisions, like light heavyweight, if you were a Tatsuro Taira, you could just hold them on the ground for 5 rounds.
That's Jan Blachowicz.
And no, only against Alex Pereira. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely hard to beat Pantoja, but he's 36 this year. I don't see Pantoja reigning for another full year and a half.
Yeah.
I think by 2026, 2027, we're looking at a new champion for sure.
Well, because he's breaking, he's breaking boundaries right now, being an older bottom 4 weight class champion.
Yeah.
Statistically, he should be losing his next fight, but that just proves how good he is. But we also look at the contenders. Royval, so well-rounded. Brandon Moreno, so well-rounded. Amir Albazi,
The GOAT.
Why are you there? And then you got a guy like Manel Kops and Kai Kara-France, some elite strikers, where if you're not a good striker, they're going to dominate you. Tetsuya Taira, best grappler inside of the whole division.
Yeah. It's a tough division, but it's not the toughest. All right, top 3 now. This is where I'm going to start off with middleweight. Bringing up my first top 3. There's so many good young guys. That was a weird sentence. In the top 5.
I love those young guys.
Like, if you think about it, I can't believe how good middleweight got overnight, it seems like. You know, when we started this channel, middleweight was in a terrible
I swear
place.
it was, we'd have it as a bottom 2 or 3 division.
I think we did.
I think it was like heavyweight, flyweight, and middleweight.
Yeah. And, but you got Dricus as a champion who wants to fight the best guys, which you got to respect. And he's just a brawler, pretty exciting. It's a guaranteed good fight. Not great, but good. Depends on the matchup. And then you got technically the number 1 ranked fighter, Nasruddin Imavov, coming off massive win streak, wins against Israel Adesanya, and like boxer, but also has good ground game, so he's super well rounded, also big. And then number 2 spot, it's probably still Sean Strickland. So, you know, a good fighter, hard to get through as like a young up and comer. How do you beat that style? It's pretty tough. And then you got people like who's number 3? I guess Hamzat would be number 3.
Yeah.
Who's, you know,
might be the most dominant fighter inside of the whole UFC.
Yeah. Again, like, how do you game plan for a guy like that who you know is just going to ragdoll you whatever you do? And then you got a little bit further down, you got Whitaker, you got Kyle, you got Izzy. Like, all these guys are so good.
And the best top 5 gatekeeper in the UFC right now, Jared Cannonier.
Yeah.
You can't get past that guy, really.
Yeah, he is the fraud checker.
He's a dog.
Yeah. And then a little bit lower down, it definitely starts to get weaker. You got Dolidze, Vittori.
But those are still like guys, it's a 50-50 on if you're going to beat a Dolidze, Vittori.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, they're nothing special.
No, if you're good, you'll get through them.
Exactly.
But if you ain't going to get through them.
Yeah, and for contenders, you do have some names. You had RDR coming up. You had Bo Nickel.
We haven't talked about that guy in ages.
He's irrelevant now.
He fell off.
He's so irrelevant.
He lost MVP, and we haven't talked about him since.
Yeah. Who else is there at middleweight? I'm sure there's some prospects that we're missing out on, but it feels like Bo Nickel is the biggest one.
Yeah.
So.
Hey, that could be I see a 1 in his future against RDR. I don't think he's keeping that 0.
Yeah, it's tough. It's not the year for zeros.
No, which Loner Kavanaugh, please pull through. Let's hope he pulled through at this point.
I'm excited for that card.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. We're filming this before London.
Mm-hmm.
London. All right, my number 3, it's bantamweight. I just think when we look at the top of it, so stacked. You know, guys like Merab, who at this point I think is basically unbeatable. I don't see a single bantamweight who beats him right now, you know, within the next year. Sean O'Malley, who, unless you're Merab, you probably lose to him. Umar, and then also Peter Yan. Like, that might be the best top 4 inside of the whole UFC, you know, right now. And then we look down inside of the outside of the rankings. We have our 2 top bantamweight. We'll talk about some top bantamweight prospects. Peyton Talbot, he loses because the people outside of the rankings are that good. Guys like Raul Rosas Jr. gets a loss because the guys outside of the rankings are that good. In other divisions, these guys just have cakewalks, but in bantamweight, they don't have those cakewalks, you know? We look at a guy like Basharat, whatever one loss, they both have the same name.
Javid and Farid.
Same thing. Got his loss.
Yeah.
You know? Because the guys outside of the rankings are just that good inside of bantamweight, you know? And I think that makes up for the, I don't want to say lackluster, but like 15 to 10 range. Mm-hmm. But the guys from 15 to 10 aren't that great.
No.
You know, imagine most of all, my final point, you're an up and coming prospect, you know, and you're right outside those rankings. They're like, all right, we got one more fight for you outside of your rankings. We're giving you Cody Garbrandt. You're cooked.
What do you mean you're cooked?
You're cooked.
Bro, you touch him once with the paper and his chin is just
You're
gone.
cooked. You ain't beating Cody Garbrandt to get in those rankings. But I just think with the where this division shines is the top and outside of the rankings, which is where I think it becomes the hardest. You know, guys we thought were shoo-ins to become champions one day, we're like, oh, that guy's actually terrible. Mm-hmm. You know, because of the outside is that good.
Yeah. It doesn't have like one punch KO power, which makes it usually, you know. All right, moving on to my number 2. This is where I got welterweight. There's, again, similar with middleweight, there's so many good young contenders, not 34 like in light heavyweight. They're 28, 29, 30, 31. They have time left in their careers to keep on building up win streaks. And, you know, even if a guy like JDM fights for the title now, I can guarantee you he's probably going to be fighting for the title again in 2 years. So I'm really confident about the future of this division, and I think in terms of becoming a champion outside of the rankings, you have guys like Mike Malott, who should be ranked in pretty much a lot of other divisions.
Canadian glaze.
And the only time we've ever glazed a Canadian on this channel, and he's not in welterweight, and he lost to Neil Magny, so fair enough, but I just think you have so many good welterweight prospects who are still outside of the rankings, and it's a division where it has really good history of GSP and used to be the
CM Punk
the top division, and I do feel like it's slowly making a comeback to that top. You know, Kamaru Usman was a really good champion for welterweight. Bilal is I think it's just
he's a bridge champion.
Yeah, exactly.
He's the bridge moving us out of the Kamaru, Leon, Colby,
yeah,
Masvidal, Woodley era and into the Shavkat, JDM, Protez, Buckley, Gary era,
which like is an insane era.
Yeah.
Like that's insane, all those names, and you still have guys like lower down in the rankings that are exciting. You have Steven Thompson, you know it's going to be a good fight.
Miles Morales,
exactly.
You know, I think people in welterweight are going to struggle to have 2 title defenses, you know, for anyone to have like 3 consecutive championship wins is going to be tough.
I think what could happen potentially is you see a guy, maybe it's JDM, maybe it's, you know, whoever it is, but you see a guy that becomes a little bit better than all of them, and then you get a Kamaru Usman situation where he's picking up like 2 or 3 wins off the same guys.
Oh, please.
So you never know.
Yeah. Shavkat just feeding wins off Joaquin Buckley. Give me 3 Joaquin Buckley dubs.
Exactly. I just think like it's gonna take a lot for a new prospect to make a name for themselves, because you already got so many, you don't need any more. So it's like, imagine if you were the person coming up in welterweight, how are you supposed to outshine Carlos Prates?
Yeah, who even are the welterweight prospects? All we think about is the guys in the rankings.
I know, it's really tough.
I couldn't even tell you a welterweight prospect off the top of my head right now.
It's Mike Malott, bro. It's Neil Magny.
Mickey Gall.
It's Neil Magny, bro.
All right. Time. Oh, wait, no. You're number two.
You're number 2.
I got middleweight here. I think we start at the top. I stand on this that a healthy, active Khamzat Chimaev is the best fighter inside of the UFC. We also put that up with Plottar Dricus, Sean Strickland, Israel Adesanya, Robert Whittaker, Imavov Barajo, Cannonier. This is a tough top. We talk about divisions with the best top of the division. It might be middleweight. You know, it's a lead up there. And then we go lower down. We have our Fluffy Hernandezes, our Delitzes, our Vittoris. Those guys are like, those are tough wins. A guy like Anthony Hernandez, I think if you put him in other divisions, is a top 5 fighter. But here he's barely cracking the top 10 just because of how stacked it is, you know. And he's not getting, you know, decent wins. He's getting pretty dominant wins inside of the UFC. You know, he's coming out here and he's getting good wins, but he's just still so low down inside of those rankings. You know, he's a guy that should be way up, but he's struggling to make his way up because middleweight is that stacked. You know, we look outside of it, guys like Sharaputin, Megamadov, Bo Nickel, RDR's just freshly in there, but you know, we have that revolving door of guys who are kind of around in that 15 spot, and they're good fighters, you know. And we look at a guy like Bo Nickel, who's potentially a future, you know, he's one of the future fighters that Dana has handpicked, kind of. And it's like, other divisions, you could find an easy path for him. Middleweight, there's no easy path for a guy like Bo Nickel. You know, going in there and having to fight RDR your first fight inside of the rankings is tough. You know, and then from there, where do you go? Do you go to a Fluffy Hernandez? Do you go to a Delice Vittori? Guys who are, you know, bona fide grapplers inside of the UFC, which we've seen to be a challenge for collegiate wrestlers, you know? So I just think that while the outside of the division may not be the best, you know, there's a lot of cans outside of the rankings lower down in like the top 30, top 40 range. You know, those guys are cans, but they are in most divisions. Once we get into the rankings, outside of number 1, there's very few divisions with the dominance at the top, you know, 2 guys who might be 2 top 5 fighters inside of the UFC, and then just like the contenders who are all just so good, and then the rest of the division. I think that middleweight is truly the number 2 hardest division to become champion in.
All right. Well, I guess we both have the same number one then.
Oh, it was obvious.
Yeah, that's why. That's the reason why I made this video.
Yeah, Islam Muckleberry.
It's so freaking crazy how good lightweight is. You know, it just. I think we're at the end of the era for sure.
But
we're at the last year of this era. And I think it might take like next year, I would be very interested to compare our 2025 video to our 2026 video. Yeah. If this channel makes it that long.
It will. I have belief. Unless you just get another kid and have to leave.
I think one more might be too much to keep going.
We should probably just have twins.
We should?
No, I said you should.
We should have twins?
You should have twins. Maybe triplets. But I think we look at a guy like BSD, you know, it's like, oh, you know what? Yeah, this guy, he's the future. Makes it into the rankings. They're like, all right, you're in the rankings now. You know who you're going to fight?
Dustin Poirier.
Dustin Poirier.
Bro. That's so crazy.
See you later.
And as BSD, Dustin Poirier. Bro, I hate that's all I think of when I see him. Poirier. Dude, so annoying.
Paddy Pimblett's in any other division, he's in the top 5. But they're having to be so conservative with this guy.
Yeah.
Because they're like, give him a Gaethje, give him a Poirier, give him a Charles. He's toast, and he's my favorite fighter. He's toast against Charles.
Yeah, the top 15 is so hard to crack.
Yeah.
You got even guys like Bahamondes.
Yeah.
Like, that's a hard fight for a lot of guys. And then people who should be ranked, like Joel Alvarez, like the top 20 of this division, I would say, is stronger than any other top 15.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
We have guys like King Green who in other divisions are ranked.
Brother.
Maybe not.
Brother, this guy's getting flatlined every fight.
Mauricio Rufy is outside.
True.
Even a guy like that's old now, but it's still a tough fight. Jim Miller.
Yeah. Dude, Jalen Turner just retired because he's in too hard of a division. Bro can't get any more wins.
Chase Hooper's coming up.
This division is so bad it's affecting their mental health. All right?
I gotta leave.
Yeah. That's crazy. Bro.
I lost the love for the fight.
And then even if you look at the history, this division's history is incredible.
Yeah.
Khabib, Conor,
RDA,
bro, the GOAT, Dustin Poirier, interim champion. Like the fact that
Tony Ferguson.
You have guys that Dustin Poirier, Tony Ferguson, Gaethje, who have never been champion, is just so wild.
Select few.
You know, it's the only of the elite few that get to be.
And the next lightweight champion, Ilia Topuria, just continues that legacy of just being dominant.
Yeah, and obviously Makhachev, you know, like we talk about how hard it is to get ranked, insanely hard to get ranked in this division. Top 10, you know, you still have Michael Chandler. You still have, who else is there? My brain ain't working today, I'm going to be honest.
Top 10?
Yeah, we have
Moicano, Dariush
Fiziev is
he's
up
11.
There. Yeah, so you guys, like, Dariush.
I said Darnush.
I didn't recognize the name. Sorry.
But I think that, it's just such a stacked division. And then you get to Islam Makhachev at the top. And as UFC fans, all we do is discredit Islam's wins because he's just that dominant. Mm-hmm. We're like, he beat a Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier is a top 20, 25 fighter of all time, but we're going to discredit it because Islam, you know, it was a favorable matchup for Islam. You know, we loved... Oh, he's going to fight Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje's one of the best strikers in the UFC. Easy fight for him. Volk, twice. Small guy, he came up, you know. Volk's a top 5 fighter of all time.
Yeah, it's crazy. You can't discredit this division any longer. And then with Topuria, it just adds that extra matchup of, okay, well, now you got to wait even longer because champion who has wins over 2 of the featherweight goats, like...
Yeah, 2 top 10 fighters.
Yeah, you're going to give him big matchups no matter what. So, the last thing, I sent this to Dylan yesterday, but on the Kamaru Usman podcast, this dude matched up to Poirier with Mateusz Gamrot. I can't say what I want to say on this channel.
Hey, it's a big test for guys like Armin, Hooker, those contenders. They all got to go through Gamrot.
Dude, Topuria versus Gamrot, it's so bad. It's so bad it makes my skin crawl.
And the thing is like, I could see the UFC booking that.
No shot, dude. No shot.
I could see the UFC booking that. That's going to wrap it up for us today. Make sure you guys go down to the comments. Let us know, what is the hardest division to get ranked inside of the UFC? Do you guys agree with us with lightweight, or you got another opinion? While you guys are down there, make sure you guys liking and subscribing. Appreciate all the love and support. And we'll see you guys next time. Peace.
See ya.